Hi everyone, my name is Simon. Welcome to a rendering teardown section. Today we'll be dealing with this really funny interior rendering. I don't think I'll have much to say, but still, so let's do it. As you can see, this is like a really interesting image, frontal view, really efficient and detailed. The project itself is kind of complicated, I have to admit, because I guess that's the main point, is that you have to look at the image quite a long time to get like the idea of how the mezzanine work and how you get there and etc. But still, it's a really good image, and the point of view is quite fun. Still a couple of things that could be well, a couple of details, like it's especially going to be about detail this time. First one is going to be about the framing. Here we have, as you can see, or maybe you haven't noticed yet, but still, one thing here is that tiny foreground, which basically, well, it's not adding anything to the image. When you're doing with like, basically when you have like foreground, like really foreground, it has to have like at least like the ratio has to be interesting. Here it really looks like it's way too thin. It will have to be at least like this big to mean something, and it will also need a little bit more detail on it, like maybe at least a shape, or maybe like some sort of like props on it, which is not happening here. So what you could do is basically just get rid of this lower part, which is not interesting, and that way because that's the thing, like as you can see here, this basically cuts the image for no reason, whereas if you cut it that way, you get the idea that when you walk down this stairs here, you're just like, it's just going to be right there. So that's, I guess, a little bit better. In terms of texture, there are like, everything's quite interesting, although there are a couple of tiny detail, I could say. One thing would be, a couple of things. The one is like this sort of details here, which are basically never going to happen in real life. So, and especially it's a little bit a shame here, because it's really just a matter of moving your mapping like a 10 centimeter on the left, and the problem is solved. So, but still, it's something that it doesn't catch the eye. But once you have like this kind of image, you're sort of looking for tiny stuff. So that's one. It's still really good. The other thing, I'm a little bit more it's more of a problem, is this area here, this tiny bit here maybe, and this sort of stuff there. The problem is not like basically, as you can see, if I put this in black and white, this are sort of near pure, well, no, it's pure black, which is something you need to avoid. This as well, I think, is kind of pure black, yeah. So this is something you need to avoid in your images, because they're always like, it means you lose information, and well, here it doesn't take much space in the image, but still you need to, whoops, what am I doing? It's still like you lose information in areas that could be interesting. The thing is, especially here, is that since you're like, it's going to be the same setup than you have here, I guess, is that you're supposed to have like a balustrade here, and you could get reflection here from your the floorboards there, not floorboards, but cladding, whatever. So this is something that could be easily changed, and that could decrease the weight this has in the image, although it's like in the upper corner, but whatever. Same goes with this one, but that's all right. Tiny detail here as well is that I'm not necessarily against having this sort of sort of like carelessly opened things. It sort of gives tiny details of the idea that someone's living there, but still it's like, don't do it twice. Either do it on this one or this one, but I think it's a little bit too much. I really like the scene here and the way it's lit. It's really like a that's the thing, is like there are no coffee cups or whatever in this area, but with the lighting, etc., it does feel more like a breakfast scene than this thing does, which is kind of counterintuitive, but still. And the main thing that is kind of throwing me here is the size of this croissant here. It's just huge. So maybe it's not a croissant, but the thing is, like, the lighting makes it look like it is, and this is like maybe 6 times bigger than what it should be. So that's kind of a... I would just get rid of these 3 things and sort of enhance what's happening there with the lighting, which is extremely well done. Other thing is that maybe it's just like really personal, but still in terms of design, it's kind of not the best chair you have here. But anyway, it's not really details there. I think that's pretty much it for the details part. One thing also that could be fun, I think it's not done here because it looks a little bit too perfect. One thing you can think of, whether you're working with glass or this kind of highly reflective material, is to have like a tiny bump in it. So basically what you would have is just use like a noise with like a quite big size, and plug it in your bump map. That way you'll have like just a slight distortion, because these kind of material cannot get them perfectly flat. And the second thing you can do to have like even more realism is to use like a material by element. If you have like V-Ray, a material by element material, so that you can have like different bump map for each of these doors. That way you'll have like a slightly different reflection, and it will be even more realistic, because here it's a little bit too perfect. And that's the thing, when you're doing like, when you're at the next step and you're dealing with like really nice details, what you have to do is to be careful with this sort of like, you're not adding detail in terms of just adding stuff to add stuff. You're adding detail that creates something that, like the approximation of perfection, because you cannot, like, nothing is perfect. You cannot have pure white, you cannot have pure black, nothing is going to be perfectly flat, nothing is going to be perfectly sharp in terms of angle and all that stuff. So that's the kind of net level you want to have in your rendering, and it's something you can really simply input. In terms of, I think I always like quite contrasty images, so I've bumped up a little bit the contrast, but it was already quite working. You might want to also have a bit of fun with the Burn & Dodge tool, but it's just for funsies. But the bloom effect here on the jug here is really, like, I really like this place here, this area of the scene. Beside that, I think we're really, like, there's not much else to say. So another really tiny detail, that when you, like, this sort of looks like it's the same mapping here and here, etc. But that's just tiny details. Anyway, I think that's gonna be it, because, well, I'm not gonna spend hours trying to find what's not working where the image is obviously working perfectly. So I guess that'll be it. Hopefully you've learned some really tiny detail you have to keep in mind when you're doing this kind of images, and yeah. See you guys. Bye.
Tonight, I knew